Breaking news, a CNN exclusive. It is the latest bombshell in the growing state of chaos inside the Trump White House. But when Sanders was asked if Attorney General Jeff Sessions was going to be fired, I should say, she wasn't as certain.
Not that I know of.
So what about a replacement for Hope Hicks?
The decision on that hasn't been made.
So what is going on at the White House? It's not a joke. The work of the country needs to be done. Someone needs to be in charge. So we have more breaking news. As you cover this White House every single day, it's in chaos right now.
You know, when the wheels come off, what else comes off next? The doors and the windshield, perhaps. And I think you have to separate the palace intrigue turmoil from the policy turmoil, because we've had both of those.
H.R. McMaster could leave the White House.
The president is referring to some of these reports as fake news. When the president describes something as fake news, more often than not, it's not fake news. Don, that is a level of turmoil and chaos that any White House would really sort of buckle under.
More on the chaos engulfing the White House, Fox News, and how they downplay bad news about the administration, but how they broadly downplay big stories and important news.
Fox was, frankly, and this is true, downplaying it.
Admitting to lawmakers that she sometimes tells, you know, what amounts to white lies for the president.
I think there's tremendous chaos. This should be of concern to everyone. We need to get to the bottom of this, and the president has attempted in a million different ways to stop this investigation. We simply cannot allow that to happen. We cannot allow the president to interfere in any way with this ongoing investigation.
A whole lot of chaos and upheaval in the White House. We're going to break down everything you need to know about the Trump administration and how it's being run and what it could mean for the country. Do we have that much time? White House in turmoil.
Well, we've seen this movie before.
We knew President Trump likes chaos.
Well, look, we heard from the very beginning. This is not new. We've heard from the beginning. You know, he likes chaos. He likes tension in the offices around him. Now it's just frightening because we've seen what chaos can bring. You know, and I don't minimize the threat of North Korea, and they certainly represent a threat. But one has to be very sober about that issue. And the question is, can this president be sober? Is everything about, you know, his mood of the moment?
We're also reading reports that all the chaos is making the president seething with anger, and he's in a bad place. He's isolated.
It seems like the circle is closing in a little bit, and that may be the reason why he is so furious with the Attorney General again in such a public way. Another really peculiar exhibition on his part. When we talk about this chaos, the leaps on policy, he's going to impose order out of chaos. If the president is a spawner of chaos, well, concerns and you have to think, as I said earlier, soberly about this.
Well, first of all, there is no ethics advice given in this White House. This is the ethics shop that wrote the Office of Government Ethics and said that the ethics rules don't apply to the White House staff. I mean, they get their ethics advice by watching Fox News. The president came in with unprecedented conflicts of interest, and he basically gave the middle finger to anybody who said he ought to divest his assets. But everybody knows what's going on. It's obvious what's going on. And the public doesn't need to put up with it. And they ought to hightail out of the White House.
Almost 6 in 10 Americans think President Trump is a racist. You know, there's going to be a lot of discussion about this. RC, most Americans think President Trump is a racist. 57% of all adults, more than 80% of blacks, 75% of Hispanics, and nearly 50% of whites. What's your reaction?
I have one word. Duh. I mean, this is something that the president has proven, and the day that he announced for president, when he called Mexicans rapists and criminals, the Charlottesville incident, the Judge Curiel incident.
You know, I was telling you, Don, I struggle with whether he's a racist or just a bigot that traffics in racial
Isn't that a
stereotypes.
difference in degrees, though?
Well, sort of. I mean, yes, from someone in the office of the presidency.
If you don't prioritize racism or bigotry or misogyny or whatever, that means you condone it, right? And you're condoning it in a certain way. You're adjacent. Adjacent means you're standing beside it. That's what adjacent means.
Silence is complicity.
So go ahead, Ken.
I actually think a lot of people who voted for Trump, including a lot of Republicans, were at least hoping that he was saying these things during the campaign just for effect. Not that that makes it okay. I actually think that makes it even worse.
Okay.
But I do.
And this is the president. Watch this.
They're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists, and some, I assume, are good people.
Look at my African American over here. Look at him. Are you the greatest?
We're building a wall. He's a Mexican. We're building a wall between here and Mexico.
If you are saying he can't do his job because of his race, is that not the definition of racism?
I don't think so at all.
Are you racist?
I am the least racist person that you have ever met. I am the least racist person.
So this has been happening. We've been talking about this since the campaign began.
The fact that Donald Trump is not Bull Connor's version of racism does not mean he is not, in fact, a racist or just as bad. I think 21st century racism looks a little bit different. It's not necessarily white hoods and yelling the N-word in the street. So racism is, in fact, a system that is perpetuated. Yeah, I mean...
Unfortunately.
Well, yeah, Meg, you're right. Maybe we come in full circle.
But they're wearing khakis.
But I mean, racism, it's khakis and polos in some effects. So racism is a system, Don, and it's not always transactional. And Donald Trump, I do believe, is traffics in racism, is in fact a racist, hangs out with the white supremacists, sympathizes with them.
The number of people who say that Trump is racist, 57% though, I mean, it's very similar to the number of people who disapprove of Trump's performance in office in a recent poll. Yeah.
I also think that they are starting to realize just how pernicious having a racist in the Oval Office is, because it goes beyond words. It goes beyond all of the insulting litany of things that you just ran, Don, and the list goes on and on. We could probably do a whole program on the sound bites of how racist his comments have been in the past. But it goes to policies that actually have been incredibly hurtful to the communities of color in this country.
I'm glad you said that, because I want to pose this to Ken. There's a concern about the impact of his policy. So let's talk policy. People say, oh, well, this is how people feel. They feel he's racist. He said this or whatever.
Yep.
But about his policies, here's what the poll says. 57% of Americans believe his policies have been bad for Muslims. 56% believe they have been bad for Hispanics. 47% believe they have been bad for blacks. Are you concerned Republicans will pay the price for this in 2018, Ken Cuccinelli?
How people feel is important. They decide how they vote based on how they feel. But the facts and objectivity are important too when it comes to economic success and improvement. And we're on an improvement path.
Simone, go ahead.
The points that Republicans like to, some of my Republican friends, not all, like to cite around the unemployment rate for African Americans in this country is a bunch of BS. And I'm sorry, but the fact of the matter is that the unemployment rate for black people in this country is still 2 times or more higher than white people in this country. And so I'm not happy about that. Yes, the economy is actually an issue that cuts across the board. Healthcare is an issue that cuts across the board. But I don't think what my friend Ken here understands is that this is not how people necessarily just feel about the president. We have real policies that have come out of this White House and out of this administration have had time to sit and fester for a little bit, if you will. And so folks aren't just telling you how they feel about the Muslim ban. They're telling you how they've directly been impacted by it and why, in fact, they think this policy is bad.
A rooster will take credit for the dawn, okay? Which means that what Trump is taking credit for was not of his making, number one. Number two, to Ken's point about how people feel, look, they might see that the economy is getting better and they actually do credit Obama more than they do Trump. But more importantly, especially for Hispanics and African Americans and Muslims, when you have to cower in your home because you believe either that the police are going to be after you or that somebody's going to come deport you even though you are a citizen of the United States, or that someone else is going to attack you because of what the president has been saying.
That's the bottom line here.
That is going to be a big deal in the midterms.
Right. It's perception is reality. Whether the metrics bear it out or not, it's how people feel.